All right, today we're diving into one of the biggest, most chilling cyber espionage stories of our time. It's the story of Pegasus, probably the world's most powerful spyware, and the incredible global investigation that dragged its secrets out of the shadows.
But first, just think about this for a second. What if the phone you're probably holding right now, the one with all your private messages and personal data, could be turned against you? I mean, fully activated, controlled, and monitored, all without you ever clicking a link or even knowing it happened.
You know, that's not some sci-fi plot. That is the reality at the heart of the Pegasus scandal. The whole thing started with a single secret list that was leaked by a whistleblower. And on that list, over 50,000 phone numbers, a massive global directory of potential surveillance targets.
And just to give you an idea of the sheer audacity here, that list included the personal cell phone number of the president of France, Emmanuel Macron, plus most of his cabinet ministers. This wasn't about targeting small-time activists. This went right to the top.
So the story just exploded on July 18th, 2021. On that day, a whole group of international media outlets all published, at the exact same time, this bombshell investigation. And it revealed a story of covert surveillance on a scale that, honestly, we'd never seen before.
And the weapon at the center of it all? A piece of software called Pegasus. Now, this is not your average computer virus. We're talking about military-grade spyware, a literal cyber weapon cooked up and sold by a very secretive Israeli tech firm called the NSO Group. Officially, NSO Group always claimed Pegasus was sold only to governments for tracking serious criminals and terrorists. Sounds like a noble cause, right? But the investigation uncovered a completely different reality. The software was being used systematically to spy on journalists, human rights activists, lawyers, and even heads of state. So just how powerful was this tool really? Let's take a closer look at what made Pegasus the ultimate spy in your pocket.
Once a phone was infected, the operator had total, complete control. They could read all your messages. Yep, even the encrypted ones on apps like WhatsApp. They could track your location in real time, go through your photos, and this is the most chilling part, they could secretly turn on your phone's microphone and camera, basically turning it into a live surveillance bug you carry everywhere.
So how did it even get on people's phones? Well, the early versions used those trick text messages with bad links, but Pegasus evolved into something way more sophisticated, the zero-click attack. It's exactly what it sounds like. An operator could just send something invisible to a target's phone, and that's it. It's infected. You don't have to click on anything. The target would never, ever see a thing.
Now, to uncover a conspiracy this huge, you need a journalistic effort that is just as massive and just as secret. So how on earth did they pull it off?
It all kicked off when an anonymous source, whose identity is still protected, leaked that list of 50,000 numbers. They give it to a French nonprofit called Forbidden Stories. And this group has a really incredible mission. They continue the work of other journalists who've been threatened, jailed, or even killed.
Forbidden Stories knew right away they couldn't do this alone. What came next was months of secret, coordinated work. Think about it. They had to figure out who these numbers belong to, contact them, convince them to let their phones be analyzed, and then piece this giant puzzle together, all without anyone finding out.
So to make it happen, they built this incredible global alliance. Forbidden Stories teamed up with Amnesty International Security Lab. They're the technical wizards who did the complex forensic work to find traces of Pegasus on the phones. Then they brought in a whole consortium of 17 media organizations. We're talking heavy hitters like The Guardian and The Washington Post to investigate the names and tell their stories to the world. So, after all those months of digging, who did this global team find was actually being targeted? Well, the results were pretty stunning.
Of the 1,000 or so people they were able to identify from the list, the breakdown was really telling. This was not a list of terrorists. It was absolutely packed with over 180 journalists, more than 85 human rights activists, and hundreds of politicians and business leaders. You know, the very people whose job it is to hold power to account.
The names really put a human face on the data. People like the famous Mexican journalist Carmen Aristegui and, of course, President Macron. But the most chilling discovery was this. The list also had the phone numbers of people very close to Jamal Khashoggi, the Washington Post journalist who was murdered by Saudi agents. Forensic analysis even suggests his fiance's phone was infected with Pegasus just days after his death.
Khadija Ismailova, a journalist from Azerbaijan who was also targeted, she put it very bluntly. This was not about security. She said it's for blackmail purposes. It puts people in danger. Because when you hack a journalist's phone, you don't just compromise them. You compromise every single one of their sources, putting countless other people at risk.
As you can imagine, when the Pegasus project story broke, it sent absolute shockwaves around the globe, sparking diplomatic crises and forcing this huge global reckoning over the completely unregulated spyware industry.
The investigation was able to identify at least 10 governments as NSO clients who were responsible for the targeting. This included countries like Mexico, Morocco, Saudi Arabia, India, and even Hungary, a member of the European Union.
And the scale of use by some of these countries was just staggering. Out of those 50,000 numbers on the list, a massive 15,000 of them were selected by clients in Mexico alone. In second place was Morocco, which selected over 10,000 numbers, including many inside France.
For NSO Group, the company behind it all, the fallout was severe. I mean, they denied everything, of course, but the company was slammed with lawsuits, reportedly fell into serious financial trouble, and was eventually placed on a trade blacklist by the U.S. government for acting contrary to the national security interest of the United States.
The scandal also exposed some pretty uncomfortable truths much closer to home. The European Union launched its own inquiry, which later found out that at least 14 of its own member states had been clients of NSO Group. They were using the spyware for all kinds of reasons, sometimes even to target their own domestic political opponents.
So what are we left with? The Pegasus project proved, without a doubt, that a powerful invisible weapon was being used to silence dissent and chip away at democracy. And it leaves us all with a really critical question for our digital age. When governments can secretly buy and use military-grade spyware against their own people, who is actually left to protect the truth?